I stood on the deck of our cabin, watching the sun sink behind the Rockies. The air was thin at 8,000 feet, and it made my chest tight. Or maybe that wasn't the altitude at all. The funeral home had closed an hour ago. They'd taken Margaret's body to Denver for cremation, like she'd wanted. I'd driven back up the mountain alone, the way I'd driven down alone that morning. The way I'd done everything alone for the past 2 years. The cabin was too quiet. I could hear the aspen leaves rattling in the evening wind, the distant call of an elk somewhere down in the valley. But I couldn't hear Margaret's breathing anymore. For 26 months, I'd fallen asleep to the rhythm of her oxygen concentrator, the mechanical hiss and click that meant she was still here, still fighting. Now, there was just silence. I walked back inside and looked at the hospital bed we'd set up in what used to be our living room. The view of the mountains had been her one request. "If I'm going to die," she'd said when the doctors gave us the diagnosis, "I want to see the peaks every morning." So we'd converted the whole space. Sold the couch, moved out the coffee table, brought in the adjustable bed, the IV pole, the portable commode. Made it work. The bed was still there, stripped down to the plastic mattress cover. I'd have to deal with it eventually, return it to the medical supply company in Boulder, but not tonight. Tonight, I just poured myself 2 fingers of the Maker's Mark that Margaret had bought me 3 Christmases ago and sat in the rocking chair by the window. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It had been buzzing all day. Distant cousins I hadn't heard from in decades. Margaret's college roommate. Her book club friends from before she got too sick to read. Everyone expressing their sympathies, their shock at how fast it had happened. Pancreatic cancer doesn't give you much time. From diagnosis to death in 27 months. Some people don't even get that. But Sarah and James hadn't called. My daughter and my son had sent a joint text this morning. "So sorry for your loss, Dad. We're thinking of you." That was it. Not, "We're on our way." Not, "We'll be there as soon as we can." Just thinking of me. From San Francisco and Boston, respectively. 3,000 miles of thinking. To be fair, they'd visited twice in 2 years. Sarah had come out last Christmas, stayed for 3 days. Spent most of it on conference calls with her tech startup. Barely looked up from her laptop long enough to say hello to her mother. James had visited in the spring, 18 months ago now. Stayed 4 days. Helped me install grab bars in the bathroom, which I appreciated. But he'd seemed uncomfortable around Margaret, unsure what to say as she got weaker as the cancer ate her from the inside out. They'd both sent money. That counted for something, I suppose. Helped with the medical bills that insurance didn't cover. The home health aides. The prescriptions that cost more than our first car had. But money isn't presents. Money doesn't sit with you at 2 in the morning when the pain is so bad she's crying and the morphine isn't working yet. Money doesn't hold the basin when she's vomiting from the chemo. Money doesn't learn how to change a catheter bag or clean a PICC line or adjust an oxygen tank. I did those things. I took early retirement from the accounting firm in Denver, cashed out my 401k, and moved up here full-time to take care of my wife. We'd bought this cabin 15 years ago as a weekend place, a dream for retirement. We got the retirement, just not the way we'd planned it. The first year wasn't too bad. Margaret could still walk, could still do most things herself. I just had to drive her to appointments, make sure she took her pills, cook meals that she could keep down. But the second year, the second year. By month 15, she needed help getting out of bed. By month 18, she needed help with everything. Bathing, dressing, using the toilet. The visiting nurses came twice a week, but the rest of it was on me. I learned things I never thought I'd need to know. How to prevent bed sores by rotating her position every 2 hours. How to crush pills and mix them with applesauce when she couldn't swallow. How to operate a feeding tube when even the applesauce became too much. The hospice nurse, Carol, had been amazing. She'd come 3 times a week those last 2 months, teaching me everything. "You're doing great, Robert," she'd say. "Most spouses can't handle this. They end up putting their partner in a facility, but I couldn't do that. Margaret wanted to die at home, looking at her mountains, and I'd promised her that. I'd promised her a lot of things. On our wedding day, 38 years ago, I'd promised to love her in sickness and in health. I'd meant it then, but I hadn't really understood what it meant. Now I did. It meant learning to clean wounds that wouldn't heal. It meant sleeping 3 hours a night because she needed pain medication every 4. It meant watching the strongest woman I'd ever known become as fragile as paper, and still telling her she was beautiful because she was. It meant saying goodbye alone because your children were too busy to come. I'd called them both when Margaret took her last breath. 3:15 in the afternoon, Mountain Time. She'd been unconscious for 6 hours by then. Carol had warned me it could go fast once she slipped away. The breathing changes, she'd said. Gets irregular, then stops. I'd sat there holding Margaret's hand, watching her chest rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and not fall again. And I'd called Sarah first because she was the oldest. Got her voicemail. "This is Sarah Chen. I can't take your call right now. I left a message. She's gone, sweetie. Your mom just passed. I'm so sorry. Call me back." Then James. He'd answered, at least. "Dad? What's wrong?" Like he didn't know what could possibly be wrong when his mother had been dying for 2 years. "She's gone, son. About 5 minutes ago. Peaceful. She just slipped away." There was a long pause on the line. Then, "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. But I'm in the middle of a huge deal closing. I can't just leave right now. Can we talk tonight?" That was it. "No, I'll get on a plane. No, I'll be there tomorrow. Just a deal closing. More important than his mother's death." Sarah had called back 2 hours later. "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. This is just terrible timing. I'm about to pitch to investors in 2 days. It's been scheduled for months. I can't postpone it. Can we do a memorial service next month? When things calm down?" Next month. When things calm down. Like death is something you can schedule around. I'd told them both that the funeral was this morning. Private service, just a few of Margaret's close friends. Cremation following. They could do their own memorial later if they wanted. I didn't say what I was thinking, that if they couldn't be here for the end, they didn't deserve to be here for the ceremony. My phone buzzed again. I looked at it this time. Sarah. Text message. "Dad, can we talk tomorrow morning? There's something we need to discuss about Mom's estate." Estate? I almost laughed. We didn't have an estate. We had this cabin, which was worth maybe $400,000 if the market was good. We had my pension from the accounting firm. We had Margaret's life insurance, $100,000 that would barely cover the final medical bills. We had each other's love, which had been worth more than all of it combined. But Sarah wanted to talk about the estate. I didn't respond. I finished my bourbon and went to bed in what used to be our bedroom. The bed felt enormous without Margaret in it. I'd gotten used to sleeping in the recliner next to her hospital bed, close enough to hear if she needed something in the night. Now there was just empty space and silence. I must have slept eventually because I woke to someone knocking on the cabin door. Hard, insistent knocking. I looked at my phone. 7:30 in the morning. Who the hell? I pulled on my robe and walked to the door. Through the window, I could see a car in the driveway. A rental. Silver SUV with Colorado plates. And standing on my porch, looking impatient in expensive hiking gear they'd clearly never actually hiked in, were Sarah and James. I opened the door. "Dad." Sarah stepped forward like she was going to hug me, then seemed to think better of it. "We drove up from Denver. Got in late last night. Thought we'd surprise you." Surprise. That was one word for it. James was behind her, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, Dad. How are you holding up?" I stepped aside and let them in. What else could I do? They were my children, even if they hadn't been here when it mattered. Sarah walked straight to the living room and stopped short when she saw the hospital bed. "Oh, you haven't cleared her things out yet?" Her things. As if Margaret's final months were just things to be cleared out. "The funeral was yesterday," I said, my voice flat. "I haven't had time." "Right. Of course." Sarah set down her designer handbag on the kitchen counter. The same counter where I'd mixed Margaret's liquid nutrition every morning for 6 months. "We should probably talk, Dad, about the arrangements." "The arrangements are made," I said. "Cremation. Ashes to be scattered in the valley below the cabin, like she wanted." "No, I mean the financial arrangements." Sarah pulled out a folder from her bag. Had she brought paperwork? To my house? The day after her mother's funeral? James at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Sarah, maybe this can wait. It can't wait. We have a narrow window to contest the will if there's going to be any issues. She looked at me. Dad, we need to talk about Mom's assets. I stared at my daughter. She looked like Margaret, had the same dark hair, the same determined jaw. But there was nothing of Margaret in her right now. Margaret had been soft where it mattered, hard only when she needed to protect the people she loved. Sarah was just hard. What assets? I asked. This cabin, her life insurance, her retirement account. We need to make sure everything's divided fairly. Fairly? The word came out sharper than I'd intended. You want to talk about fair? We're entitled to our inheritance, Dad. Sarah's voice was calm, rational. The voice of someone who'd negotiated a lot of deals and knew she was right. I know this is emotional, but we need to be practical. James and I both have our own families to think about, our own futures. We can't let sentiment cloud our judgment. I looked at James. He couldn't meet my eyes. Your mother had her will updated 2 months ago, I said quietly. Everything is legal. Everything is documented. We'd still like to see it. Sarah pulled out a business card. This is my attorney. We think it's best if everything goes through proper legal channels. No personal conflict. Just clean, professional distribution of assets. She'd brought her attorney's card. To my house. To talk about dividing up her mother's things before the woman was even cremated. Get out, I said. Dad, we're not trying to get out. I opened the door. You weren't here when she needed you. You don't get to be here now to pick through what's left. We have a legal right, Sarah started. I said, get out. I was shaking now. 2 years of exhaustion, of grief, of watching my wife die, while my children lived their lives 2,000 miles away. And now they showed up for money. You didn't visit. You didn't call. When your mother couldn't walk anymore, couldn't eat anymore, couldn't do anything but lie there and try not to scream from the pain, where were you? Pitching to investors? Closing deals? That's not fair, James finally spoke. We both have responsibilities. Families, jobs. I had responsibilities too. I had a job too. But when your mother got sick, I gave it all up. Because that's what you do when you love someone. We loved Mom. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. We did. We couldn't drop everything. Not everyone can do what you did. Then you don't get what she left behind. Because she left it to the person who stayed. Sarah's face went cold. We'll contest it. We have grounds. Undue influence. You were her caretaker. You could have manipulated her when she was vulnerable. That's when something broke inside me. I'd been holding it together, for Margaret's sake, staying strong through all of it. But hearing my own daughter accuse me of manipulating my dying wife, that was too much. Your mother knew exactly what she was doing, I said, my voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. She was dying, Sarah, not stupid. She knew who was here. She knew who cared. She knew who called once a month for 10 minutes and who sat with her through every night when she couldn't sleep from the pain. She knew who learned to operate medical equipment they'd never seen before and who sent checks instead of showing up. We sent money, James said defensively. That helped, didn't it? It helped pay bills. It didn't help her feel less alone. So this is about punishment? Sarah's voice rose. Because we didn't martyr ourselves like you did, we don't deserve anything? This isn't about what you deserve. This is about what she wanted. And she wanted the cabin to stay with someone who would love it the way she did. Someone who would sit on that deck and remember the 40 years we spent here together. Not someone who's going to sell it to the highest bidder to fund their next startup. How dare you? I dare, because I earned the right. I was fully shaking now. I earned it every time I changed her sheets at 3 a.m, every time I held her while she cried because the cancer hurt so bad. Every time I told her she was beautiful, even when she was down to 90 pounds and couldn't recognize herself in the mirror. I earned it by being here. Where were you? The silence that followed was heavy. Outside, I could hear a raven calling. Margaret had loved the ravens, called them good luck. We'll see you in court, Sarah finally said, her voice tight. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. James followed, pausing just long enough to say, "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am." Then they were gone. I watched their rental car disappear down the mountain road, leaving me alone again. I spent the next 3 days ignoring their calls. They left voicemails. Sarah's were increasingly angry, threatening legal action if I didn't respond. James's were apologetic but still insistent that they just wanted to talk. I deleted them all. On the 4th day, there was a knock at my door again. This time, it was Robert Martinez, Margaret's attorney. We'd worked with him for years, trusted him completely. "I heard," he said when I let him in. "Your kids contacted me, wanted to know if there were grounds to contest Margaret's will." "And?" I told them they could try, but they'd lose. He sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out a manila envelope. Margaret was very thorough, Robert. Very clear about what she wanted. She knew this might happen. She knew? She suspected. You remember that conversation we had 2 months ago? When she insisted on updating everything? I nodded. Margaret had been adamant about it, even though it had taken most of her strength just to sit up for the meeting. She told me she was worried her kids would come after you. She wanted to make sure you were protected. Robert opened the envelope and pulled out several documents. Everything is here. The deed to the cabin, transferred to your name alone 6 months ago when she could still sign documents herself. Her life insurance, with you as the sole beneficiary. Her retirement account, same thing. There's nothing for them to contest. She took care of it all while she was still competent, still able to make her own decisions. No undue influence, no manipulation. Just a woman who knew what she wanted and made sure it happened. I felt tears start to form. Even at the end, Margaret had been taking care of me. "There's one more thing," Robert said. He pulled out a sealed envelope with my name on it. Margaret's handwriting, shaky but clear. She asked me to give this to you. Said to wait until after. Well, after. I took the envelope with trembling hands. "Thank you, Robert." "She loved you very much," he said quietly. "Anyone could see that. What you did for her, Robert, that was real love. The kind most people only read about in books." After he left, I sat on the deck with the envelope. The sun was setting again, painting the peaks gold and pink. Margaret's favorite time of day. Magic hour, she'd call it. I opened the envelope. "My dearest Robert," it began. Margaret's handwriting was worse than usual, proof of how sick she'd been when she wrote this. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if I know our children, and I do, they've already made their true priorities clear. I'm sorry for that. I raised them better, or at least I thought I did. Somewhere along the way, they learned to value success over family, money over love. That's not your fault. That's not even my fault. That's just who they became. I want you to know that everything I did with full knowledge and intention. The cabin is yours. It was always meant to be yours. We built our life there. You gave me 2 more years in the place I loved most. You never complained. You never made me feel like a burden. You learned how to do things that most people couldn't imagine doing. You bathed me when I couldn't do it myself. You fed me when I couldn't swallow. You held my hand through every terrifying moment. You were there. Sarah and James sent money. They sent wishes. They sent love, they said. But they didn't send themselves. And I need you to understand something, Robert. That wasn't enough for me. And it shouldn't be enough for you either. Money is easy. Showing up is hard. Staying is harder. You did the hard thing. You earned every single thing I'm leaving you, not through inheritance or obligation, but through love. Don't let them make you feel guilty. Don't let them tell you that you manipulated me or pressured me. I was dying, Robert. Not stupid. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew who loved me and who loved the idea of me. I knew who would sit with me and who would sit with their ambitions instead. You gave me everything I needed at the end. I can only hope I gave you something in return. Keep the cabin, sit on the deck, and watch the sunsets. Remember me, but don't be sad. We had 38 good years, more than most people get. We loved each other the right way, the real way. That's worth more than any inheritance. All my love, always and forever, Margaret." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, but from the relief of being seen, of being understood, of having someone validate what I'd done. Margaret had known. She'd known all along. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. Sarah and James filed jointly, claiming undue influence, manipulation, and cognitive impairment. They brought in medical experts who testified that pancreatic cancer could affect judgment. They brought in a psychologist who talked about the vulnerability of dying patients. Robert Martinez destroyed them in court. He brought in Carol, the hospice nurse, who testified to Margaret's clear mind right up until the last few days. He brought in Dr. Patel, Margaret's oncologist, who confirmed she'd been competent when she signed the papers. He brought in 3 of Margaret's friends who'd visited regularly and could testify to her clarity and intention. And then he read Margaret's letter, out loud, in court, every word. I watched Sarah's face as the judge listened, watched her realize that her mother had known, had seen through them, had chosen to protect the person who'd actually been there. The judge threw out the case after 3 days, ruled that Margaret had been fully competent, that all documents were properly executed, and that there was no evidence of any undue influence beyond the natural influence that comes from actually being present in someone's life. Your mother made her wishes clear, the judge said directly to Sarah and James. She chose to leave her estate to her husband. That was her right. The court sees no reason to override that choice. Sarah and James had to pay their own legal fees, and mine, and they left the courthouse without looking at me. I haven't heard from them since. That was 8 months ago now. I still live in the cabin, still sit on the deck every evening and watch the sunset. Sometimes I talk to Margaret, tell her about my day, ask her opinion on things. I know she's not really there, but she's not really gone either. She's in every board of this place, every view from these windows, every memory that soaks into the wood. I'm thinking about volunteering at the hospice center in Boulder. Carol says they need people who understand what caregiving really means, people who've been through it. I could help other families figure out the feeding tubes, the medication schedules, the 1,000 tiny things that keep someone comfortable at the end. I could show them what love looks like when it's not convenient anymore. The ravens still come by every morning. I've started leaving out scraps for them, like Margaret used to do. They remember me. They call out when they see me, that low, croaking call that sounds almost like conversation. Margaret would have liked that. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah and James will ever understand what they missed. Not the money, not the cabin, not the inheritance, but the chance to really know their mother at the end. The chance to see her bravery, her humor, even when everything hurt, her grace in the face of death. They missed all of that. Chose to miss it. That's what I can't forgive. Not that they weren't here for me, but that they weren't here for her. But I was here. I was here for every moment. And Margaret knew that. She saw that. She honored that in the only way she could. The cabin is quiet tonight, but it's not lonely. It's full of 40 years of love, of laughter, of mornings watching the peaks catch fire with dawn light and evenings counting stars. It's full of Margaret, and that's enough. That's more than enough. It's everything.